welcome back to another Insider, the last Insider of the month of September. And today we are going to talk about two things that, although they seem similar, there is differences between them. They are two different services, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion about these two services. What should we do, or what I think we should do? And this is proofreading versus post-editing. So come with me and let's talk about this. So let's talk about proofreading and post-editing. A lot of us do both, and sometimes there might be a little debate and confusion about the two services. And sometimes, I must say, some clients, especially agencies, may try to get one for the other, but there are differences. The work involved is totally different, and in my view should be definitely should be charged accordingly. So let's see. So proofreading, and this is also according to our code of ethics. It's wide, the wide description of proofreading. When you have a proofreading project, a translation is given to you with the original text for you to look for typos, inconsistencies, errors, grammar issues that might be there. And your job is to read that translation against the original, find all these little problems that might be, check if the translation is actually conveying the right meaning. So if it's accurate, you need to look at all these things. And what you do, you point out the possible comments that you might have, and then if it's done properly, and there is where sometimes things don't go as they should, your client should then send it back to the original translator with your comments, and then the original translator will read your comments, will check it out, and then they will come back to you with either comments, like if they accepted your notes or not, but obviously in the end it's totally up to that original translator. The translation is theirs and they have the right of that translation. If they find that whatever you have pointed out it's not okay, they are not willing to change it, I believe they are entitled to do so. So your job is just to point out a few. It's basically a second set of eyes into a human translation that was done by a professional, a highly qualified professional that has done the translation, and you're just there to a second set of eyes to check maybe there's a tiny little typo or something like that. Usually these jobs, if it's a proofreading job, there's not much to do, because of course it's done, providing that it's done by a professional translator. There will be just maybe a few typos, or sometimes there's really nothing to point out. Sometimes is one of the things that I find really common with proofreading jobs is localization issues. For example, the client has given the project, let's say in using my pair of languages as an example, to a Brazilian colleague, did not specify to the Brazilian colleague that that project was for the Portuguese market. So the Brazilian colleague done it with the variant of the language that is spoken in Brazil, and it's quite correct. However, then they come back, let's say, to me, and they tell me that the project is going to go to Portugal. And of course, I will find that there is some localization issues because the original translator was from Brazil and translated it with that variant of the Portuguese. Totally fine for the Brazilian market, not so fine for the Portuguese market. So this is mainly the issues that may occur when you are dealing with proofreading projects. Of course, the only thing you have to say is you point out this is if this is a project for Portugal, there's a localization issue, and then it goes back to the original colleague. And of course, if the colleague was informed it was for Portugal, chances are they're going to change it. If they weren't informed, I would say they would get a little bit upset, because I think it's one of the things that it should be said in the beginning, so the professional knows what they are dealing with, and the colleague most probably say, well, I didn't know it was for the Portuguese market, and I would say they would accept the changes because they would know it's going to go for Portugal. But that is a totally different story. So when we talk about proofreading, we talk about two professionals, two human professionals, two translators, one that does the project, the other one reviews it and checks for any possible issues. Now, post-editing. Post-editing became really, really popular with the proliferation and spread of MT and now AI. So what usually happens, and this is mainly used by agencies or companies that have huge amounts of work, that it's not very technical, does not need that much of that technicality, so to speak, there, even though I honestly, I'm very, very, very skeptical about it, because I think if you have a company and if you need translation, whatever it might be, maybe manuals, maybe of appliances or something very simple, or maybe something more complex, I think it's part of the reputation and the image that you pass of your own company if things are done properly, including the translation of your manuals and stuff like that. But that's just me. So going back to our topic, some companies, when there's manuals that are less technical and things like that, they may use machine translation and translate it all and then give it to a translator to, they say, proofread it. Well, let's see the differences here. This is not proofreading. This would be post-editing. First, when you give it to that translator is no longer put comments and going back to the machine for the machine to agree with. That translator will check for the problems, for the errors, for whatever it might be, and then they will correct it. And that's editing, post-editing. Chances are, and from my experience, chances are that translator will basically have to redo that translation, because let's face it, and even though machine translation and now AI, these technologies have improved quite a lot over the past decade, they don't have cultural nuances, they don't have anything, they don't have that thing, that knowledge that only comes with a human eye. So chances are the translator will basically have to redo it. So it's not just having a look for possible typos, it is looking at the original, looking at what the machine has done and correct it. So it will take more time to do. It will be a lot of, I would say, quite frankly, I would prefer to get the original and translate it all from scratch, then sometimes having to look at what is done by the machine, and that sometimes it's just a word salad because it's all mixed up, and sometimes the quality is really not there, and it takes a while. It takes a long time for you to put everything together and get into something that can be actually published. So it is a different thing, takes a different time to do that job, and therefore should be charged accordingly. So what should we do? Well, I would say that if you have a post-editing work, you need to charge accordingly. You can charge it per word. I wouldn't charge per word, quite frankly. You could charge per 100 words, per 1,000 words, whatever you choose, but you need to charge. And I would say your charging for post-editing cannot be the same as your charge for proofreading, because the job is not the same. You take longer to do a post-editing job. It takes more skill, because you're not just basically reviewing someone's job, you're basically redoing something that has been done by a machine. So I would say there should be these are two different services, and they should be charged as two separate services. A lot of agencies, a lot of companies try to send you work as proofreading, and when you look at it, you check and you see that it's not possible that a human translator has done that, and you see that that is not proofreading at all, that is post-editing. And then, in my view, you should inform the client that that job would be charged as post-editing because you detected that it was done by a machine, that the quality is for post-editing, not for proofreading, and you should charge accordingly. If the client doesn't want, well, yes, okay, they can go. You need to stand for whatever you are doing, because it's a given that a lot of translators complain about the quality of the industry, about the challenges that we face, about the exploitation, about all of these issues. But when it's time for us to do something about it, most of us just comply and don't say anything. And that's where I think we are wrong. If we stand for what we believe it's right for ourselves, chances are we get changes done. Because if no one accepts something like that as a proofreading job and charges it as proofreading, then they will see, no, they are not accepting this. We need to ramp up and, just do the right thing. So I would say that we really need to understand what we need here, understand what the two jobs are. It's a totally different project. It's a totally different task. One, you just review and you point out to your colleague, this is what I noted. There's a tiny little typo there. This might be a localization issue. You just politely, obviously, point out to your colleague that you find that. And sometimes it can also be a misinterpretation on your part. And then your colleague comes back, no, you misinterpreted. If you read, this is what I meant here. And then you may actually look and say, oh yeah, you're right. And then you go back to your colleague and you say, okay, yes, I agree. It's not just you pointing out someone else's mistakes. Sometimes you may look at it, you may interpret it in a way, and then your colleague comes back, no, you misinterpreted. This is what I meant. This is what it was there. And then you look again and you actually see that, yeah, all right, you are right. Sometimes it's just a comma. Your colleague forgot, and this only points out the importance of punctuation. It's just a comma that was missing, and without that comma, the meaning of that sentence is totally changed. And then you see, okay, yes, it was a comma there that should have been there and wasn't, and that's why I didn't read it correctly. And then the colleague pointed out, yes, I added a comma. You know, it's tiny little things that sometimes we are all human, and I myself see this with even my work. You are working, and sometimes it's very tricky because your brain tricks you into read things correctly. So what I do sometimes is I translate, I finish the project, and then I take a 5-minute break to stay away from it, and then I go back to review it. Because if you review it straight away, chances are you are prone to make mistakes, because your brain is going to look at those words. If there is a typo, your brain is going to read it correctly, and it's less likely for you to find out tiny little typos or little mistakes. Of course, if it's a grammar mistake, if it's a comma that is missing, yeah, you will, because you will be reading it, and when you read it, you'll see, no, I need to put a comma here, I need to do this there. So that part of the job, it's easily detected. However, sometimes the typos are really, really tricky to detect, because the human brain is very tricky, and once we do the job and we read it, our brain is wired to read it correctly. And we've seen this even with things that we didn't read. Sometimes on social media, there's all those, those posts that people sometimes put where they write a text with missed words or letters put the other way or something like that, or they mismatch the letters within a word. And in the end, you are able to read the text, even though the letters are misplaced within words. You are able to read the text because your brain looks at it and you read it, and you manage to read it. And this is what happens with us. If you are, let's say, 2 or 3 hours working in a project, translating, and then you stop the translation and you start the proofreading, you start the reviewing straight away. Well, it's quite likely that some of your mistakes will not be picked up by you. So you should always give it, you don't need to, of course you don't have time to, for example, I remember when I took my course, I was advised to take a break and leave it to the next day. Well, we know in the real world, we don't have the next day. We have tight deadlines. We need to deliver the work for the client on time, and there's no such thing as giving an extra day just because you need to leave it from one day to the other. And with experience, you learn strategies to deal with this sort of thing, and you learn how to train yourself to detect these things, even if you have to put a mistake or something like that. So I would say that you really need to go and read and see what is happening, and it happens. That's it. And it happens with all of us. It happens, definitely happens with me, happens with everyone. So it's quite important that we understand this. And this is proofreading. This is when something is done. There might be a tiny little typo. There might be a little comma that was missing. It might be something like that. Or even, and this has happened with me several times, I translate the whole text. And then when I'm reviewing it, I read it and I say, nah, I don't like this. I'm going to change it. Because when I read it, I'm reading the original as well. I don't like this. And I change the whole sentence. It happens to me so many times, because when you are doing it, you get one idea, you translate in one way, and then when you are reviewing it, even though what you translated was correctly translated, you may think, okay, I can change this. I think I would put this in another way. It conveys exactly the same meaning, but I think it's more fluent. So you give that fluency on the target language. And this is common. This is very common within translators. Well, it is common with me. I certainly do it a lot of times. Of course, that won't happen if you're just translating a police check, for example, or a birth certificate. It won't happen. But if you're translating, let's say, a school report or something that has a huge amount of text, chances are it's going to happen. Chances are you are going to read the original, you will translate it in a way, and then when you go and review it, you're gonna look, and you are going to point out to yourself places where you will change it and you'll make it better. And then you do it. And that's your reviewing. So this is you proofreading your work. Sometimes you have a client asking you to proofread someone else's work. Sometimes you may even have a team with you, some colleagues work in a team, and then they give the proofreading to another colleague. I remember when Updated Words was a team of independent translators, we thought about doing that, but because my colleague was in the UK and I was in Australia, that wouldn't be feasible, because by the time that I had to deliver my projects, she was still sleeping, and vice versa. By the time that she had to deliver her projects, I would be still sleeping. So, because my working hours were her sleeping hours, and her working hours were my sleeping hours, so it was not feasible. But if you have a team of independent translators, just like Updated Words was, and you work in the same time zone, in the same country, you can do that. For example, you can set up that you do the project and then you pass it on to a colleague and they can proofread it for you. I don't know if there's any colleagues out there that will do that. I think it would be possibly feasible. However, let me say, if that is the case, you need to put it on your terms and conditions. You need to inform your clients that that is your work ethics, that's the organization of your team, and that's how you work, because the client needs to understand and needs to work that more than one person will work on that project. Be careful with that, because if you're not telling your clients, they may come back to you for all sorts of reasons, being confidentiality one of them. So be sure that if you decide to do something like this, you inform the client of that. Usually when you receive proofreading jobs, they come from agencies, and they know, because they tell, and the clients, the final client, when they go to those agencies, they know it's a big project that goes to several translators and then proofreaders, and chances are that project is a massive project that includes other services. So it's a different type of story. And again, on that case, it's not your duty to say anything because you don't deal with the final client. But if you have a final client coming to you for translation and you have a team working with you and you will gonna give that translation for one of your team members to proofread, then you will have to tell your clients about it. Please never forget that. So for today, I hope it really helped you understand that there's a little bit of a difference between proofreading and post-editing, and also the charge part of it as well, and all the other things that have been happening in the last few years because of the increase in post-editing jobs. A lot of translators do that. Let's face it, some of them were really forced to do it because there was no other way. And we need, if we are going to go that path, because we need to adapt, we really need to adapt our pricing, and we really need to price ourselves accordingly. And make clients understand that these are two different services that entail different times, obviously. And yeah, I understand they're running businesses and they will want the cheaper service, but if they are going to get a service that is not exactly what they thought it was, obviously they have to be charged accordingly. And post-editing is not exactly the same thing. It's not entirely the same thing as proofreading, and therefore needs to be charged accordingly. If you have any questions about this topic or any other topic that I have discussed in our insiders, please leave a comment below and I will be very happy to accommodate your queries. I've seen there has been an increase in views of all the videos of mine, and I have had viewers asking me questions. I thank you all for that. I will be having a look at the most watched videos and the topics of those videos, and in 2026 I will be revisiting some of those topics, because obviously there will be changes to the way things are done these days, and I will be revisiting those topics and creating more content. So please, if you have any questions about any of my videos that you have watched and you need to be clarified about, please leave a comment below. I'll be very happy to answer you. I'm here for you. And if you have a suggestion of a topic that you think it would be a very good idea for our translator insiders, please just suggest. Leave a comment below, suggest the topic that you would like me to address in these insiders. Please do, and I'll be very, very happy to accommodate you. And you know the whole thing. Put a like in the video and subscribe the channel with a little click on the bell so you get a notification of a new insider every week. You know the channel has been growing. I've just said there's been more people even watching my older videos and commenting, asking questions. I'm really happy about that. I'm very thankful for that. And because of that, I will be doing that review that I've said I would be doing. I'm happy the channel has been growing, but if you put a like, if you subscribe, if you share with your friends, it signals the YouTube algorithm that you are watching my channel and that my channel has more viewers, has more comments, has more shares, etc., etc. That makes it grow, because the algorithm will distribute my content to more people and therefore the channel will grow further. So please put a like and subscribe the channel. Now, before I go, I would like to thank you all for being there and watching. There will be a 2-week break because of, you know, I always have a break when the month finishes in the midweek, and because I always do that. And then because of a public holiday on the first week, or on the first full week of October. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a good break. Thank you. Bye.